Good evening. I'd like to call to order this Anoka-Hennepin School Board work session for today, February 9, 2026. Our first order of business is to approve the board agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion from Director Simon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. From Co-Chair Langenfeld. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. With 5 in favor and 0 opposed, the agenda is approved. Members, the next item on our agenda is our item 3, the consent agenda. As normal, members can remove items for separate consideration and discussion if that's their desire. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion from Director Simon. Is there a second?
Second.
With a second from Director DeShane. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. With 5 in favor and 0 opposed, our consent agenda is approved. Our next agenda item is the board calendar and district update. Superintendent McIntyre?
All right, thank you, Co-Chair Hochman. Just a couple of dates I want to point out in your materials, dates to remember. We have our Monday, February 16th is a district holiday, so we will not have school on that day, and it's a good reminder here that that day's coming up. And then a couple other key dates here. We have, as of this point, our student growth recognitions event at Anoka High School on March 3rd. I was looking forward to those events that we do each year here the last couple of years, and then also kind of a milestone moment too. We have end of our second trimester, March 5th, with staff planning and other activities with no students on March 6th. So just a couple of things that are coming up soon on the calendar. It's a little odd to be talking about the month of March. Also, I just want to take a moment to give a kind of an update to the board since our last board meeting around some of the impact and activities around the immigration and enforcement topic. And on January 26th, I gave an update to the board with some comments, and we had some discussion there. So I wanted to just update since the last 2 weeks, some information that I know the board and our public would like to be aware of. So before I get into some details, I just wanted to share that I'm really proud of our staff and the district for doing our best to work hard and support our families and students, and our team to try to do our best to keep families and our community informed. So I know at our last meeting, not all board members were able to attend, and we did have some discussion, so I want to make sure I'll try to do our best to update our board members and our community again as what has happened since our last board meeting. So since January 26th, a few things have happened. We published a community communication that addressed school and community safety in our network of students and family supports through messages that went out to all families. And our communications team shares with me that that was viewed by about 45,000 people. So it was it did get a lot of hits on that communication. We encourage families and students to connect with their school regarding any attendance concerns or any options for accommodating their attendance or any challenges they might be facing on a temporary basis. We've also worked hard to continue to update and provide resources and links at our website at ahschools.us/immigration, including additional information about bus stops. There was a discussion about bus stops at our last meeting. So we did add a Q&A item for that particular topic. We shared information also in our monthly Focus e-newsletter in the last 2 weeks that was sent out, actually it was last Wednesday, February 4th, which also included resources for families and how to navigate conversations or guidance if it was helpful for families in those areas that might be feeling impacted. We've also had some media coverage. I know NPR News, our local ABC papers, some social media posts by local legislators, and we've also had some national media here, of course, in the Twin Cities. I know we were referenced in the New York Times story as well. So we've had some media coverage. When it comes to staff, there were some questions about that at our last meeting. We've addressed resources for staff and communicated with our staff to ensure that they're aware of our approach and our district plan. We've had just shy of 12,000 hits on that, and we have 8,000 employees, so we know that multiple staff must be, using that multiple times. We've also shared with the public resources that we gave our staff, made sure our staff got that communication that we sent to families, along with the resource page for staff and our intranet page, where our staff go to get the tools that they use for their day-to-day operations. So at the January board meeting, in our community and staff messages, we did share that overarching district plan and kind of how we're trying to accommodate for attendance. And right when those concerns began to emerge, we made sure that our school principals, our counselors, social workers, and teachers and other staff members took immediate action to make sure we're creating plans to continue learning for students on a case-by-case basis. So really, our approach has been to individualize that as much as possible for anyone who shares some personal safety concerns. So that support has really been a school-focused, school-based, student-centric approach, really customizing that support for each student and their family. A couple other comments here. Our approach has been to be as practical and provide as many foundational, consistent tools to maintain engagement, maintain access, maintain academic progress for students who might be impacted. And really, we're just trying to do our best to provide consistency and stability through the challenges that we have here, and we're monitoring that closely. So our district's learning and achievement team has continued to develop and make available any ready-to-use online or print materials that teachers might need, so that they can use those with their students in their that are assigned in their classrooms that might be being impacted, which really just helps them remain connected, provide grade-level learning, and minimize disruption as much as we can. So families or students who are looking for support, we just strongly encourage them to reach out to their school, start with their teacher, their principal, their school counselor, or social worker, and they will work hard with them to make sure they're connected with the resources that we have available. Last time, too, I kind of covered some, we get questions, I know board members, you get questions about what incidents have happened in our district that we can verify. And so there's two I can share with you in the last 2 weeks that we feel comfortable that we can verify. I think I shared 3 last time with the board. We did here in the last 2 weeks have an incident where we had enforcement agents parked in one of our elementary school parking lots, in our staff parking lot. And I want to give credit to our local law enforcement. They worked with our safety and security team along with the school administration to have them leave the property so that we could maintain a safe distance there. So they were very compliant once we had a chance to engage with them. We also had a situation where reported by one of our elementary schools that on the way to school, we had immigration agents follow a school bus and then approach an adult when the students were getting on the bus. So that's one of those concerning areas where the sight lines and students can see some of those activities happening. But in both of these cases, I can report that all of our students and families were okay. Students made it to school safely. And whenever we get a report like this, I'm looking at Greg Cole and our team, we investigate that. I know Tim Palmetier has given some updates as well on investigations of incidents that we can confirm. And we do the best to determine the most appropriate communication plan based on the facts and the timing and the situation of any incidents that we can't confirm. Knowing that we transport nearly 32,000 students every day with over 500 vehicles and 8,000 bus stops. So it's a massive operation. And when we do get any reports, we do our best to look into those and try to verify. I know board members, you've also received questions regarding a lawsuit filed by Education Minnesota, and there's been 2 school districts, Fridley and Duluth, that are a part of that. The suit is based on a claim that the federal government's violating the federal law by improperly changing the long-standing policies that previously restricted enforcement at sensitive locations in school areas like buildings and bus stops. So they're seeking an injunction to reinstate those pieces, especially enforcement activities within 1,000 feet of a building or school buses, school bus stops, et cetera. So that is an active litigation. We are not part of that litigation. We do have a closed session tonight to really discuss any real details or specifics around that with our general counsel, knowing that that is an active case in process. So those are some high-level kind of follow-ups from our last meeting in the last 2 weeks, just to give you some quick updates. That's the end of my report, but maybe I'll just pause here to see if there's questions or any comments from board members.
Yeah, board members, any questions? Director DeShane?
Thank you. I will make sure I have this close enough. Is this audible? Okay, great. I just want to acknowledge that our staff in buildings are really carrying a heavy load right now. I had the chance in the past 2 weeks to attend conferences at both the high school and the middle school and talk to a variety of teachers and building administrators, and also visit several of our elementary schools. And I just want to say thank you to all of the people in the building who are keeping as much of a sense of normalcy as they can with this heaviness and this weight on their shoulders. I think 2 conversations are extremely illustrative of what's happening. We absolutely have students missing school because they don't feel safe to leave. And that is very worrying and not okay. We also have students that are at school worried about their friends, worried about their neighborhoods. And these 2 examples, one is a chemistry teacher and the other is a music teacher. And both shared that they have found that just doing what they do every single day, day in and day out, focusing on the periodic table, letting students just get into their experiments and keeping class as normal as it can be during this time is helping those students get an escape from the worries that they're carrying coming into the building and leaving the building. Same with music, right? Students are processing through music, they're processing with their friends by playing songs and being together in that way, and I know it's hard to do that. It's hard for all the adults to continue to just process life as normally as they can, and our students to do the same thing, but they're doing it, and I'm so grateful. So I just wanted to say that and acknowledge that it's hard for people in our buildings, and I'm so grateful to them.
Co-Chair Langenfeld?
Thank you. I also have had the chance to have many conversations and visit many of our schools, and again, reiterate and thank the folks. They're showing up. Our principals are showing up, our staff is showing up, and for the most part, most of our kids are showing up. Again, we worry about those who are not there, and again, there is that constant dark, heavy feeling on people's shoulders trying to make sure that everyone is safe at all times. So I think that continues, but again, the normalcy that schools are trying to achieve. There were some things that were postponed and canceled in some schools, but I had the privilege to attend a book. The young author in our community came to Monroe Elementary, and I know that there were some news stories on that as well, and was able to celebrate her book, an author coming and talking with students, and there was dance and there was music. And it was a really important day, I think, for everyone in attendance, as well as the community, to see that we are celebrating in our schools, even at this important, this incredibly, I don't know even how to describe it sometimes, at this time, in this moment of inflection in our world. So anyway, that's the good news that's happening in our schools. And again, the support from our community, both, from law enforcement as well as our entire school community and our administrative team has been exceptional, I think, in terms of ensuring that everyone is as safe as we can possibly be and getting the resources that everyone needs and deserves, whether it be in school or outside of school as well. Thank you.
Director Arco?
I was just curious, do we know how many students are missing class as a result of kind of the concerns about ice and everything?
Yeah, we are tracking our regular attendance district-wide, so on a daily basis. We don't always know exactly. We have our codes that come in, and I think from our elementary and secondary principals who are also trying to identify who might not be coming due to safety concerns, I think it's probably in the range of maybe 300 to 500 out of our 36,000. We have every day. And I will also say we are tracking our attendance. We compared the last 3 weeks of attendance compared to last year. Now, last year, this was the heavy time for illness.
Yeah.
So we had more students out of school last year at this time than this year, mainly due to illness. And not that illness isn't hitting us now, because it is. But we are below the absence numbers from last year at this time, mainly for that reason. So it's right around 5 to 6%. So we're running at 94 to 95%, which I know is honestly significantly better than other metro districts right now. So there's a silver lining there, and I think Co-Chair Langenfeld, you said it well. And I think you all would agree that consistency and stability we can provide right now for those who are able to be with us is critical. And then how do we best reach out to accommodate attendance if that's impacting a family individually, and just kind of taking it on a case-by-case basis.
Director Simon?
Thank you. New setup to get used to here. So first of all, I just want to say I missed the last meeting. I was traveling for work outside of the state, but I really appreciate your guys' discussion. So I went back and watched it, of course, and you already kind of talked about it, and Corey gave an update. So thank you for that. One thing I wanted to comment on is that, our teachers are doing a great job, and they've always done a great job, in all honesty, when, whether it's this incident or other situations, students have to miss school, and sometimes for an extended period of time, and teachers fill that gap. But when you have increased students for maybe a specific reason and for a longer duration of timeout, we as a district also need to give them support in that area, right? So workload is a big issue for all staff and teachers. So I would just say to Corey, I know you're doing this, but please reinforce that even more. Any help we can give to teachers during this time, I think is needed and probably will be very appreciated. The second thing, since I wasn't able to speak on it last time, one thing I really appreciate, Corey, that you are doing and administration is doing and our district is doing is focusing on, you use the term verified incidents, right? So there is a lot of reporting out there. There are a lot of rumors out there. In all honesty, at least for me, it's hard to know what to believe. Like I hear it from all angles. So I think I've always focused on, and as a board member, is like, what's my role in this moment? And I always think my role is what is happening in Anoka-Hennepin and what can we verify? And that's what you're focusing on in reporting is what can we actually verify that happened? So I really appreciate that and would just like to say, let's continue down that road of, not the rumor mill, just on things we absolutely know and we have verified. I think you talked last meeting about, this meeting you talked about some incidents at bus stop and parked in our parking lot. You might not have mentioned bus stop, that might have been last time. I was able to visit one of the bus stops last week that probably had the most reports, and I was there for the middle school and the elementary bus stop pickup. I think we kind of scared them a little bit because they might have thought we were there, but not from the district, but we introduced ourselves. So if we did out there, school, I apologize for that. But nothing, it went off without a hitch. There was a lot of community members there supporting. After all the buses left, immigration enforcement did come in the area, but they didn't come during our bus pickup. So I think that's, at least in that moment, I think that was a positive for our school district. And then you had mentioned the lawsuit with Fridley. I'm getting a lot of comments, and I know we can't talk specifically and go into detail about lawsuits or potential or those types of things. We'll do that in a closed session, but I'll just say that with the Fridley and Duluth lawsuit that's out there right now, that's in the news, so it's public. Again, I've always been focused on what happens in Anoka-Hennepin. So I do not necessarily lean towards saying, let's join something that isn't specific to us. So I just wanted to mention that, but I do think we do have incidents here in Anoka-Hennepin. So how can we engage with immigration enforcement, if we can engage with them specifically, and say, like the van stopping incidents that Corey went into last meeting, at least when I viewed them, and I know the board viewed them, I viewed them the Friday before your meeting. That was a concern for me watching that. And I just wonder how we can engage, or if we can engage in a proactive and positive way with enforcement to say, hey, look at this. Like, in my opinion, this shouldn't happen. Do you agree? How can we work together to do it? In lieu of a lawsuit, I'm not sure if it comes to that or not with Anoka-Hennepin, but I would rather go in a positive way and have a dialogue. But I know we'll talk about that more in closed session, but I just wanted to mention that to the board on kind of my thought process since I wasn't here last Monday. So thank you.
I appreciate that comment. I think one of the things, having been a superintendent in a city and place where ICE would come, and not like what's happening here in Minneapolis, it's a very different kind of conversation in the community when the lawsuit is addressing that particular statute or law, whatever it is in place, that they don't come on school grounds. And I think it sets a different tone. I was of the understanding that things were toning back, but again, I think it's really important to have really information that's verified and current in our community. I don't know how you would go about doing what, you suggested, but at the same time, I think that people would appreciate, recognizing the fact that many people are willing to have those conversations and would appreciate having a place and a space where we could return to ICE coming into the community, because quite frankly, they've been here for a long time, and they were in Green Bay, and even when they would come to town, it would be a very different outcome than what's happened here, so.
I just want to make sure I take a moment to thank our safety and security team. When we do get reports, we, in our whole team works hard to be as supportive as we can. We deploy them out to the site to provide our administrators and our building staff the kind of support they need to make sure we're providing a welcoming and safe environment. So I know, as I'm looking at some of them in the audience, the minute we get a call, we are reacting and responding and investigating and taking action immediately, and many won't see those actions. But that's what we do every day, and working hard to make sure we do everything we can to, and I really also should echo the sentiment that our building leaders are doing an amazing job working within our unique individual communities to make sure that they're, again, sending that message of it's safe at school and doing everything we can to help safely get students to and from. So thank you, board members, for your comments.
All right, thank you, Superintendent McIntyre, and yes, thank you to all the staff, from top to bottom, from all the people working hard to ensure that our kids are safe and that they're getting the quality attention and education when they make it here to school. From our safety and security team to our bus drivers, appreciate all of the hard work. Okay, our next agenda item is item 5, work session. We will begin with learning and achievement curriculum adoption process. Okay, welcome Superintendent McIntyre and Sarah Hunter, Executive Director of Learning and Achievement.
As Sarah gets comfortable, I want to give a moment to just say thank you to co-chairs Langenfeld and Hochman, as we've been having some conversations the last few weeks on how to continue to develop our curriculum adoption process. So based on those conversations, we're kind of coming to the board here for some initial recommendations on how to keep this process moving forward.
All right. Good evening, co-chairs Hochman and Langenfeld, Superintendent McIntyre, and the rest of the board and the public. I am very excited to be here to talk about this process, given that ensuring that all of our teachers have the best quality materials in their hands to educate our students is, I would say, like the biggest and most important part of my team's job. So I'm excited to get to both share some edits to the process and talk about the first steps that we would like to take later this winter and spring. So the first thing that I would want to share is We had and still have a very comprehensive process for curriculum adoption. And the edits that have been made are predominantly for streamlining particularly the initial steps in the process, and then moving a couple of the steps in the prior process to sort of a better spot so that there aren't redundancies or sort of repetitiveness in the process itself. So what you see on the screen right now, and we are rebranding to phases because it isn't accurate to say that we just have 2 steps. So I want to say that off of at the beginning. What we've done is we've taken the prior process and we've reorganized the steps, so prior steps, into basically a pre-phase, which is what I'm going to talk about in detail this evening, which is called Igniting the Process. That's essentially the pre-work that is done mainly so that, like has been mentioned already this evening, steps that can be done without bringing educators out of their buildings can be done by district office staff, so that when we do bring educators into the process, we're using their time the best that we can. And then what we would move into, and I'll talk about in much more detail throughout the winter and spring this year, are phase 1 and phase 2, which are the 2 parts of the process where we would come to the board with action for you to take as a board. So this evening, I will step right into igniting the process. So these are the first few steps, not phases, that we would like to take essentially as soon as possible. So I want to walk through what that would look like. So the first thing that we need to do when we know or we are concerned that some of our resources might not be meeting our students' needs is to look at our standards, identify gaps in student data if there are any, right? So places where our students aren't being as successful as we would want and need them to be, and make sure that the resources that we have in our teachers' hands aren't that there isn't misalignment. And then to make sure that if research has changed, such as the research around science of reading, right? We have now adopted curriculas that are supportive of what we know students need in order to learn to read. So things like that and other content areas we would look at as well. And that is because we want to make sure our resources are aligned to standards and are rooted in our research-based best practices, and then first and foremost, meeting the needs of our students. So once we identify a need, right, a gap in either what our students are showing us with their achievement or our materials, we would do a resource all call. So that is the sort of first step in what you would see either publicly or internally in our process. So we as a team, so each of these slides tonight have the same structure. So who would be doing that action, what is it, and then why, and we'll continue with that consistent format through the rest of the presentations this spring. Just for consistency. So we, as my team, would identify resources that are being used effectively elsewhere, right? So whether that's inside of our state or outside of the state, we want to know what's working well so that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. And then sort of aligned with that, we would invite vendors to provide us with curricular resources that align with what our needs are, right? So we have a set of minimum criteria that would apply across content areas. So again, we're looking for potentially curricula that are already successful, right, have measured success, and that align with what we need. And then once we do that, so that's a public all call. You would see that vendors offer us their resources. Some of those resources aren't going to be what we want, right? We're gonna get a ton of resources that are offered to us, and we want to make sure that we narrow down that group of resources to a smaller number that truly align with what our students need. And here's where we would start to bring in other folks into the process. So instructional coaches, if applicable in the content area. We would then use a rubric that we create in partnership with RET that is aligned with all of the evidence-based best practices in whatever content area that we are looking for resources in. And the goal there is, again, like I said, to narrow that selection of resources so that when we bring teachers in the very next step, we've narrowed what is in front of them to what we would actually want to be using in our classrooms for a potential pilot. Then, this becomes the much larger group. And this is where I think both members of the public and school board members would want to know, this is the first time that we would have a space for you all to be a part of a group, including my team. We would have study committee members, so this is where it becomes a much larger group. Content area and grade level teachers, so whatever content area that we are looking at materials in. Members of the technology team, in order to make sure whatever resources we're looking at align with Anoka-Hennepin's technology. Instructional coaches again, and then school board and community members. And there, we would take that rubric, we would have vendors present their material, and then we would gather feedback from that whole stakeholder group. So each of the members of that committee, in order to determine how to narrow for a pilot itself. Assuming that we were successful in finding materials that do align with all of those sort of different steps in the process, I would then come back to the school board with a recommendation that is based on the stakeholder feedback on what resources to pilot in whatever content area or courses. Sometimes it'll be a particular course. And then that would be when this group would make a decision about moving forward with a pilot in one or more courses or content areas. I would do that on behalf of the committee, so it wouldn't be my recommendation, it would be a recommendation on behalf of the committee, and I would then be sharing the results, or the data that we gathered as a part of the process. It is possible at that point and this has happened, where you have a failed search, right? Where the materials that were offered aren't good, right? They're not good enough for our students. In that case, that is what I would present, right? Ideally, that isn't the case, but I just want to make it really clear both to the board and the public that we wouldn't bring forward resources that didn't meet our qualifications in the event that we didn't end up with high-quality resources on the table. So I think this evening, what we are hoping for is direction from the board in terms of what steps you would like us to begin to take. And then, as I shared at the beginning, my plan would be to continue to flesh out the other phases in the process as we move forward, so that we're essentially like having an ongoing conversation with the board and the public about each of the steps in this process as we move forward this spring. I'll turn it back over to the co-chairs for comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, board members? Director Simon?
Thank you for the presentation.
You're
Thanks for being here. So I just want to go back to why kind of the historical perspective of why we have the current process that we have, and
Sure.
some of the challenges we faced that created this process. So, and I don't, I'm supportive of, new leadership, new folks coming up with a process that works for them. I'm supportive of that. But, we did have where, at times in my service, we might have chased the shiny new thing at times. We may have brought in materials that were not communicated out to teachers, right? So
Sure.
they arrive at their classrooms in August or whatever, and they're like, why are there new books in my classroom? And they didn't know it. So those are extreme examples. They didn't happen all the time, but they did happen. And so we created this process to make sure the communication was effective. Certainly that made a robust place for the community to review what we were going to do, which I think is important. I know you have in here. But I just wanted to reiterate that. I'm not saying that your process won't do that, but those are just some historical things that we need to make sure we don't revisit, right? I think that in my experience, even with the process we had before, and this could have been just communication to the board. It may have been done and just not communicated to the board, but evaluation was kind of hit or miss, for me at least, on specific things we brought in. Some of them, like wonders, unbelievable feedback to us, right? Like for years about what's working, what's not working, how we're changing, things like that. And then some other things, like I don't think I've ever heard anything. I've had to ask questions about it. So I just want to make sure that there's an evaluation piece. Not only, I know you guys are probably doing it, but that it comes back to the board and we know, is what's happening what we thought was going to happen? Is it working for students? Is it working for our district? So I think that's a very important piece to me, at least. And then with that evaluation piece, I would also say, You know, Corey and our district changed our structure quite a bit this year, right? So that's why you're here, right? And so we went from more, I guess, level and subject specialists to kind of more generalist, at least high level. I think we need to keep an evaluation of how that's working too. So I think, I've heard feedback from the buildings, good and bad, right? Challenges and, no one can hear me. Challenges and successes, I think, with the process. But I think the evaluation on if that new structure works will be important for the board and the district to understand too. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Director, Co-Chair Langfeld.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation as well. I like the steps within the phased process. And I think one of the things that I see in here that's very explicitly stated is evidence-based best practices, and also looking to see where proof of concept already exists. I think that was a question, as we've been grappling through this process the last couple of years since I joined the board. And I think it's very important to have that, and I know we have talked in depth about the importance of high-quality instructional materials, and that doesn't mean the district has been not adopting those. I don't want to say that. What I wanted to do is make sure that as we begin forward and you start piloting things, just recognizing how important it is that our teachers have the very best in front of our kids, to make sure that we have those piloting programs where we want them to be as well, so that the teachers don't have to pilot more than they need to. You know, I mean, it's a big lift, and so, and I know you totally understand that based on your experience. So but it's evident in these steps, and I like them called out. So I appreciated that. I appreciate both those two really important points. And I also appreciated that you put in where the community and the school board becomes part of the process, because I want to be sure that we are very transparent. I mean, we made an investment of $4.5 million, and to Director Simon's point, I was actually around as an educator in the district when the packages of curriculum showed up, it wasn't good. And teachers need to be part of it, the community needs to be part of it. So I like the proactive approach of this, and I know many of these points were in the last step, so I don't want to say it's all brand new either. I think to be respectful to that process, and then say, you know, customize it to what you know, and work forward. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Director DeShane?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and I will echo the comments. It's very well laid out. It's easy to understand. I think it's nice to see pre-work and then phases of work. That'll help everybody understand what is happening and where we're at in the process. And I also just want to say that this current board has been very interested in curriculum, and you know, we had moved away from doing a committee-based discussion with only some board members participating to the whole board participating. So I'm thankful that we are having this on the agenda, and I think it's a really good conversation for us all to be a part of. So I appreciate that, and thank you for bringing it to us.
Thank you.
Okay. One thing that I would just like to add, Director Simon, you brought that up. We don't want to be surprising anyone, and we also want to have the best possible materials. And one thing that I think went so well, and we're going to continue hearing information about how the reading adoption went, but preliminary results say that things are going well. And I think a big piece of that was the information for the teachers at the beginning. Before we even started looking at what materials we were going to pilot or anything, it was, hey, let's see where the science of learning is right now. Let's get new information, because, you know, even the best quality teachers that we have that continue taking coursework and advancing their education, sometimes the science of learning is progressing faster than they can keep up with. So it's good for us to have that opportunity at the front of this process to say, here are the new trends, here's the information, the science of learning that we have, here's the cognitive research, and by helping the teachers see that those new trends at the beginning, maybe in professional development. I think that they won't be maybe at that surprise state. And like, hey, here, we don't just want to get you new books. That's important to have materials in the students' hands that are, not torn or damaged, but also that they're the quality pieces. And so I really am excited with this upfront process that we can look at those newest research pieces and get the best materials in front of our kids. So really excited about this possibility and the process, that it will keep working in a really positive way. Other thoughts, anyone?
Just a quick comment. Thank you, board members, for your support of the work, because there's a lot of work in front of the board coming up. So this will be a regular placeholder in all of the work sessions and, where needed, regular board meetings. The team will continue to take then phase 1 and 2 and the multiple steps within those. And at our next work session, kind of give you some time to ask questions about the next phase of the process. But this igniting the process phase is one that's really important so that the team can get to work and begin to move a lot of work forward that will be coming back to you. So again, just thank you for your support.
Actually, one thing that just, I don't know what made what you were just saying trigger for me, but just that thought, we have a number of things, areas that need curriculum adoption. Are we planning, well, they might not be yet be able to get their hands on any information because we still are at the very beginning igniting process, but are there any professional development days or planning that we can start getting them some quality information? I'm not trying to
Yes.
put you on the spot or anything, but
I
mean,
love that that's actually perfect timing. So February 17th is our all-day district PD day for our secondary teachers. We had one in October for elementary. So yes, and we are already planning for some PD1 around what the process will look like, just this very beginning phases, and then where our educators would be a part of the process. And then yes, throughout the whole day, and it's essentially set up like a conference, right? It's a professional conference that we put on for our own staff. In many cases, by our own staff presenting to their peers, which is, at least, in my experience as an educator, was when I learned the most, right, was from really rock star teachers in my own district who are able to present on their practice. So that we have a whole day of PD. Folks would be welcome, you all would be welcome to, one, look at our, what the sessions are. They're throughout every content area for secondary. Everybody gets to attend 4 sessions over the course of the day, and much of the professional development in each of our content areas is what you're essentially asking for, right? Like what does high quality instruction look like in your particular content area? And we do see it as, it's sort of like the before the igniting the process step for our educators, and that is ongoing every year, right? We have PD to start the year in August. We have it then embedded throughout the year, and so right now my team is really heavily engaged in making sure that all of the logistics for that day go off smoothly. I also just I would love to reflect back on some of the comments that Jeff made, that yes, I'm a firm believer in program evaluation and that being a really important part of any curriculum adoption process. So as I'm looking at the curriculum adoption process slide with the sort of 3 phases in my head as you were talking, I'm like, yep, so that's like the 4th phase, or the phase that's sort of off the end of my slide. And it is the phase that we are in for CKLA, Bridge to Read, and Functional Morphology this year. We have a week at the end of February where every school gets a full day walkthrough and observations around CKLA specifically. At the end of that day, we will have a ton of data that I then get to share with you all the next time we're able to be together after that week. And that's the sort of data collection that I want to be able to bring to you on any content area. That's just what we have adopted this year. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. It's important that after we adopt that we make sure the materials are actually working. And sometimes the shifts that we make in the first, second, and potentially third years after adoption are making edits to how we use the resources, right? For our own teachers, as taking things out of a box is only as high quality as the training that you provide for the teachers after the fact. So thank you for making those points. I really appreciate it.
okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Before we transition to the next one, I forgot to announce, and anyone who's watching, I should have said this at the beginning. This different setup we have here this is a work session, not a board meeting. And so we're just trying some different setups so that we can have hopefully some better just conversations around these things while it's not an actual formal board meeting, so that we can have, really carry these ideas forward. So feel free to jump in here and make certain that we're getting all the information that you all as board members need to have. Okay, with that, our next agenda item is 5B, Medical Insurance Administration Update. Welcome Dr. Jennifer Cherry, Chief of Human Resource Officer, and Todd Mensink, Director of Labor Relations and Benefits.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Board, Co-Chair Hochman and Langenfeld, members of the board, Superintendent McIntyre. This evening, we're here to do, really, I appreciate what you just shared, Co-Chair Hochman, because that isn't our intent tonight, is to provide really an overview of where we're at in relation to our health and hospitalization plan in the district, provide some baseline information for you, some key information about what it means to be a self-funded plan, and as part of that, what it means to have a third-party administrator. So we'll also provide some key information about cost drivers to our plans. We've had a lot of questions and concerns this last year. We did see a spike in the premiums that we are required to have for supporting our plan. And as we're thinking about cost containment measures, really being able to examine some of those cost drivers and what we can do to address that in the future. And then we'll also be talking about the timeline for decision-making, things that'll be coming to your attention within the next month and 2 months for actual decision-making that you have to do. So I'm going to turn it over to our expert here, Todd Mensink, that'll provide some of that baseline information.
Sure. So Minnesota Statute 471.617 governs self-funded insurance for political entities in the state of Minnesota. And it basically says any entity that has more than 100 employees has the option of, instead of purchasing insurance, insuring ourselves. And so that's what we've been doing in Anoka-Hennepin for half a century. A lot of other districts are doing it now. But we were really on the forefront. We're the first district to self-fund our insurance. And so it basically means that we are setting our own rates, paying our own claims, and then if we have a good year, that surplus we get to keep. In bad years, we might end up spending a little bit more. But in general, we're not paying insurance companies to take that risk for us. And so overall, it's a more affordable option. As part of that, we do have stop-loss insurance. The statute also allows any employer to get stop-loss insurance. And so any claims over $500,000, we have an insurance policy that covers those. We also have an aggregate policy that covers any claims over 125% of what we expect for a year. We have never had an aggregate stop-loss claim. We will this year because we're already up to about $2 million in claims beyond what we were expecting last year. So at the end of the year, when all those claims run out, we'll be getting a check from Medica for that. The statute also mandates coverages, and there's also a mention of a union role in that the unions need to. Any reduction in aggregate value of benefits needs to be negotiated with the unions. So we talk about those things in our insurance advisory meeting. In general, we need agreement from all of our unions to reduce that aggregate value. So that would mean if we were going to make our top plan worth less than it is now, we would have to negotiate that. We can make changes that are neutral in terms of aggregate value, and we can make changes to our lower plans, because they always have that option of going to the most expensive one. Moving on to administration. So every 2 years by statute, and this is also called the Health Insurance Transparency Act. It passed about 10 years ago. We need to go out for a bid every 2 years. Previously, it was every 5 years. And so this is if you're fully insured, you go out for insurance. For us, it's for the third-party administration and stop-loss insurance. So if we look at our insurance budget, in Fund 20, we have an $83 million budget. 77 million of that is claims, so that's about 93%. Stop loss is about 3 to 4%, and our administrative fees are only about 2.5 million. So less than 3% of our total cost is the cost of paying the administrator to administer our insurance. In doing the RFP, we work with Aon, and they also look at the discounts provided by the different, because they've all negotiated different discounts, and they all provide guarantees, and so they kind of roll it up and give an expected total cost to us for that RFP. And you should have a memo in your packet as well, which is our recommendation of Medica. So we just did that review. Dr. Langenfeld was at the insurance committee meeting and saw the presentation by Aon. So moving on to cost drivers and containment levers. This is a big topic we're talking about. We had those large unexpected claims last year. Our big cost drivers are high-cost claimants. We've had a lot of high-cost claimants, people that are in the hundreds of thousands to even millions of dollars in claims in a given year. In addition, specialty drugs, particularly GLP-1s, have really spiked in cost recently. And then medical inflation, it used to run about 7%. It's been running about 9%. The other thing I'll note about the inflation is the inflation on pharmaceuticals exceeds that of healthcare in general. So we usually get sort of a blended rate when we talk about that, where pharmacy might be going up 10 or 11% and other things 5 or 6, and it comes to a middle ground of 7 or 8. And again, those are just numbers I'm throwing out there. I'm not sure what the trend will actually look like. And then as far as containment levers, so the easiest, the simplest thing is you just raise premiums as costs go up. But out-of-pocket costs can also be adjusted, and so we have in the past added deductible plans. So previously, none of our plans had a deductible. We started paying on the very first dollar. People would pay a co-payment. So you'd pay $25 for your visit. Now most of our employees are on on deductible plans where they have to pay the first $1,500 or $3,000 before the insurance kicks in. And that's really a measure to try and help. It's kind of a market-based measure. The idea is people will make more affordable decisions if they have more skin in the game. I have co-insurance here, and I would also note even our high deductible plan, I mean even our plan that has all co-payments, you try and steer usage within those co-payments. So the co-payment for going to a convenience clinic is always going to be lower than for going to an urgent care clinic, and it's going to be lower than going to a emergency room. So there are some levers we can pull in our plan design to try and move people towards more affordable coverage. And then all plans always have an out-of-pocket max. So there's a point at which the plan will cover everything. And so that would be another option, is to increase those out-of-pocket maximums. Over the years, we've kept our deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums the same while everything's inflated. So the spending power of that $3,000 deductible 15 years ago was very different than it is now. So really those plans have gotten a little bit richer over the years with inflation. And then the last thing I mentioned here is just network coverage formulary. So included in this, we never cover every drug. Medica or our third-party administrator will negotiate rates for different drugs. So there will be exclusions, and usually there's an appeals process by which you can get a drug that's excluded if you need it. And then similarly, network, one strategy we've been involved with Medica for decades is using narrower networks that provide larger discounts to the insurer because we're keeping our business within the network. So we have two plans that really focus on that narrow network strategy, and the claims are projected to be about 7 and 10% lower based on the narrow network you go to versus if we had everyone in the broad open access network. Yeah, so.
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. So if we go back to the last premium increase, it was 22%, which
Yeah.
was pretty high, much higher actually than any kind of like nation average. I know there's been discussion about like how to make to not have that happen again or make it more affordable going into the future. Could you paint me some kind of a path or paint me a picture of a path where, next year or whatever it is that we're gonna vote on, like another premium increase or something, that it's, I don't know, within the average or more reasonable? Like, what's a way that we can get there?
Yeah, and so that really gets to these containment levers. So a few things we've talked about in the insurance committee. One big topic has been that GLP-1 coverage for weight loss drugs. We need to provide GLP-1 coverage for people with diabetes. It's required by law. We can't exclude that from our formulary. But for weight loss, we've always used to cover weight loss drugs, but they used to be really cheap and not particularly effective. And then these are incredibly expensive and incredibly effective, and so it's led to this big spike. And so the committee has talked about either restricting their use by requiring higher thresholds of body mass index, or even excluding them from certain plans. We might need to continue to have it on our highest plan because of the aggregate value issue. But, we could look at excluding it from some of our less expensive plans. It's 4 to 5% of our claims are going to these drugs right now. And so we have a lot of employees that would probably prefer to have a more restrictive plan that doesn't cover everything, but gives them a more affordable premium.
If
Yeah.
I can ask, so of that 22% premium increase, so if you say it's 4 to 5% of our claims, I think I heard the number that the GLP-1s were responsible for 4% of the premium increase. Is that correct?
Yeah. They're really close together. I mean, like I said, 90-some% of our expenses are claims. And then the other thing are these other cost drivers. So right now, we have a few other really nice features in our plans, like our prescription drug co-payments don't apply to the deductible. And most plans don't have that, and actually, high deductible plans, if you wanted to have an HSA, would need to apply the prescription drugs to the deductible. So we do have people that probably are spending their $1,500 deductible, but we're only charging them $120 of it because they're doing it with 12 $10 medications. So, that's one option. The other thing is increasing those deductibles or out-of-pocket maximums, or the co-insurance amounts. And so, we looked at all of that a little bit in the spring, and the staff is working with Ann this month, and our plan is to bring that to the insurance committee and then to the board in March. We really actually need those decisions to be made by the first half of March in order to get the changes into our insurance enrollment system in time for open enrollment.
And then if I can ask, because I remember the last time we had the conversation about the premium increase, it was still forecasting like a large increase into the future as well. Do we have an idea of what that might be or what we're on track to be, or is that just too early to determine at this point?
I have to say that's too early to determine at this point. There was some analysis done by Aon in order to make this projection, but they made it really with early data. They're gonna wanna get a couple more months of data to make a more accurate assumption on what it will look like. I will say we haven't seen huge increases in the last 6 months. Although, I guess this is another thing I should say. Because of the structure where people pay their deductible and then the insurance starts paying, it's really actually hard to project based on September, October, November, December, what claims are gonna look like in May, June, and July. And so our Aon has the ability to go back and they'll look at actual claims, where I tend to be looking at bills I'm paying. But, you know, a lot of the bills we're paying in September, October are really for last year's claims. A lot of it runs out several months.
Or Co-Chair?
Thank you. Having attended the meetings has been very helpful for me to understand where we currently are. And I think one of the things that hasn't been stated that I think is important is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but how people were actually did really well not going to emergency rooms, and they really took care. So I want our staff to know that's an important part, because sometimes you look and a lot of it's emergency room visits, and it was not the case. They were going where they needed to go for the lowest costs. So that was appreciated. I think the other part that is really important as we have these conversations, one of the things that came up was that the importance of staff understanding what options they have. And I know that a lot of folks, we talked about it at the meeting, people didn't always, you come on board, you might be a single person, you don't know what to take, you're brand new to the district, and you might just say, hey, Michelle, what are you doing? And I say, oh, try this. And so what they promised and the conversations that we hope to have with the members is that they really have an opportunity to talk about their needs specifically before they make a choice. And I think that will help people get the right plan. And then also the discussion around a plan that is maybe not currently being offered with a lower premium option or whatever, a payment option. So just kind of expanding the portfolio, still having that aggregate, like you said, we have to have that as part of statute, but also recognizing the importance of options, but knowing what your needs are too, and not just signing up. Now, that isn't true for everybody, but there was a lot of discussion around that, which told me a lot of people have made choices like that. And I know even in conversations when there were a lot of folks out there talking to me about different things that we were in insurance, you know, some had just looked very casually at the plans, and they had kept the same plan for a long time, and their needs had changed to fewer needs. So lots of options and opportunity out there. As we think forward, there's a lot of discussion about pharmacy on the market, you know, out there that you can just purchase versus what we're paying. How do you see that factoring in? There was just a rollout of RX out there that has much lower prices than you go out in the open market. How does that impact us, and how will that?
Are you referencing the GLP-1s?
No, I'm referencing pharmacy being reduced significantly if you go to a website, you know.
I'm not sure.
So this is like the, what's his name? The former Dallas Mavericks owner runs his own. Mark Cuban has a
Well,
a
even in
discount
good
RX. Yeah.
well, even good RX and things like
Yeah.
that are out there, that I'm hearing you can go there to get a month's supply of GLP-1 pills. I'll just use that as an example, for significantly less than maybe you need a prescription, I'm not suggesting that, and it is not a compound. And it seems like those options or opportunities are out there in different spaces. So just curious if they factor in, or,
I think maybe part of our pharmacy benefit manager, right, like we have specific pharmacies that we
Yeah.
partner with. I think
Okay.
that's something-
That, yeah, and so I know that has been an issue. Recently, you know, there was the Trump RX, the move to
yes.
where he kind of gave access to Medicare's market in exchange for having lower prices, but those prices were negotiated for Medicare patients in the private market, not for fully insured groups. And I know the Medica has talked to us about how their pharmacy benefit managers are now negotiating to try and get discounts that will match. But that is something we talked about, is would it be easier to just allow people to get it on the market and maybe through a wellness benefit, provide a reimbursement?
I would say one of
Yeah.
the other things that we worked just this last year with Medica on, and it's part of the plan to try to again contain costs as it relates to all of these specialty medications. That again are new and they're very expensive, and they're seeing really great results. But the increasing costs with these new specialty meds that are coming out have been enormous. That Medica works with biosimilars, and that's their plan. And as biosimilars become more available, that's what they work on is biosimilars first, whenever possible. And so there are some other options that we're seeing, some ways to try to contain those costs, and that's through our pharmacy benefit management as part of our plan.
And actually,
Excellent.
when you look at the disruption when it comes to pharmacy, you'll find that staying with your current plan has disruption because pharmacy benefit managers are constantly changing their formula to try and get less expensive alternatives. So we don't have 100% compliance of going from Medica to Medica because they already know that Express Scripts is going to change their formulary from what it was
Okay.
a year ago.
And so if you look at our next slide here, this provides a timeline and decision-making. In your packet, you do have a briefing on our third-party administrator. Our recommendation is that we maintain our relationship with Medica, and we'll be bringing that to you for your approval on February 23rd. And at the same time, we are working hard with our consultant, and we will be meeting with our insurance advisory committee again in the next month to start reviewing plan designs, various ways that we might propose some plan design changes. We'll come back to you on March 9th with a review of those plan designs. And then on March 23rd at the school board meeting, the business meeting, we will be recommending our new insurance plans and then rates for the 26-27 year. As Todd had mentioned, it's important for us to have those plans set in March because we need to be prepared for open enrollment, which happens already at the end of May. And our plan year is September 1 through August 30th.
Director Duchesne?
Thank you. I know you covered it briefly at the beginning of the presentation, but could you just walk us through a high level, and the board also received the briefing memo, which has the details. You did go back out for a request for proposal, which is like a bid to the market.
Yeah.
So you asked many different third-party administrators to give us rates, what it would cost for them to administer our plans, how could they look at our plans. We currently have similarities. Can you just give us a brief overview of why the recommendation would be to stay with Medica?
Yeah, absolutely. We went out, all four of the big insurers, UHC, Medica, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Health Partners responded. As well, we also got a fully insured PEEP bid. And so after reviewing those, we could see PEEP was more expensive than any of the providers, and we brought Medica and Blue Cross Blue Shield back as finalists, and gave them the opportunity to submit a best and final offer. So in the end, when we did the review, when it looked at the open networks, really they were very similar. Like, there was very little disruption. They all have big, broad, wide open networks. And so there wasn't gonna be a lot of disruption in coverage. When they did their 2-year summary, their 2-year projections, it showed that, you know, they were projecting 181 and 181.8 million, something like that. And they said that it was within that margin of error, so they couldn't really say reliably which one had a higher amount. And so after reviewing it with the insurance committee, we really didn't feel like we wanted to make a jump to Blue Cross Blue Shield if the cost is the same. The other big factor there is Medica has some kind of unique, narrower networks. And we knew if we went to Blue Cross Blue Shield, if people wanted to use that narrow network strategy, some people wouldn't be able to. They'd have to move from it, to keep their doctor, they'd have to move into the open network. So that was, I think, another big decision maker. Blue Cross did have a kind of innovative copay plan that we were interested in. But in general, the sense was that staying with Medica and staying with those narrow networks was outweighed, you know, the interest in this other option Blue Cross was able to provide.
Thank you. No, I think that's important, so it's,
Yeah.
we're not only trying to work on containing costs inside of the plans once we decide who the administrator is, but we also, for the law that you mentioned in the process, every 2 years, we're going back out to the market to make sure we're finding the best value and lowest cost kind of combination for the third-party administrator for this. Thank you. And then you said something at the beginning that I just want to make sure is clear. So we had a lot of discussion about this when we're talking about contracts and how insurance works and plays into increasing costs for our employees. For our $2 million above expected claims that the stop-loss insurance will
Yeah.
in for, is this accurate, that that is something that like the general fund of the district had to cover as a shortage from the insurance fund, then that would be reimbursed to the insurance fund or to the general fund? How would that stop-loss
The aggregate
receipt
stuff.
The
goes to
aggregate.
district?
And maybe it'd be good to have Director Vargas talk about that. I don't believe in the end the general fund subsidized Fund 20. I think, but Fund 20 pretty much ran out of money, so that will help build up Fund 20 again.
Okay, and so when you said before too, like if, I think you said something along the lines, if we have a good year with like lower claims and
Yeah.
keep the surplus, that stays in Fund 20,
Yes.
the insurance. So it's not like the district gets the surplus to use.
No,
for
it
different
stays in
purposes.
Fund
It is
20, yeah.
for insurance. I just wanna make sure that's really clear, that it's all within Fund 20 for insurance claims, and it could carry over year to year if not everything is spent down. And this year we had it spent down to almost nothing.
Yeah, and if Fund 20 were depleted, it would have to come from the general fund.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, I appreciate it.
Director Simon?
Thank you very much. Few questions first.
Was I right on that?
If there's more, I can add.
I'm gonna ask first, then you can jump in. So you had mentioned going out and getting bids, right? So we went out and got bids for the and then you had mentioned the fully insured P plan. And the P plan is the state plan, correct?
Yes.
Am I right there? Is there a difference? I've never heard the description of the fully insured or self-insured, or however you said that P plan. Is that different? Are there two different P plans, or is it just the P plan?
No, I mean, PEEP would just charge us a premium. So PEEP told us what the premiums would be, and they were significantly higher than our current premiums or what, given the information they have now, Aon was projecting.
Okay.
But PEEP is, if we had a terrible year like we did last year, we wouldn't have depleted our surplus doing that. And if we have a good year, we wouldn't keep the difference. We just pay PEEP whatever the premium is.
The state plan, we would move away from being self-insured, and if we did that, we'd join a state plan, like you had just
Yes.
said. And the premiums, really, throughout my history here, every time you've reviewed or we've reviewed the PEEP plan, it did not save our folks any money at all, and it was actually more expensive. And maybe some of the plans weren't as good also. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. In fact, one thing I think we're looking at as we look at plan designs is moving to a plan design that's more similar to the PEEP high deductible plan. There is interest, by Education Minnesota in creating a sort of mandatory statewide pool that would follow that plan design. So, that's an option we're looking at is having because our lowest plan design is quite a bit richer than their lowest plan design.
Okay. A few other questions. You talked about February 23rd, we'll approve the third party. We're approving that company, but that company makes up, I think you had said, 2.5 million of the 84 million. So that approval is about really those costs and who's going to be our third-party administrator, obviously not the plans. I just want to make sure the public and everyone understands that's going to be a review for later. So that's a small portion. It's an important decision, but a small amount of it. And then you had talked about the 22% quoted increase that we had recently in premiums, and that GLP-1s were, I'm going to say, you said 4 to 5, I'll just say 5% of that total cost or increase. Medical inflation, you had mentioned 9%. So that would mean the high claimants were 8%. Is that
That's
accurate?
roughly accurate,
Roughly
yeah.
accurate, okay. So obviously, Michelle talked about this, and she's on the committee, which I think is important, but the plan design is going to be very important for if there's increases or not, right? Can we create a plan that people could save money, or maybe it's the same, or there's smaller increases, right? That's really where the rubber meets the road on what folks' insurance is going to be. And we're not going to get away from, maybe we will, but we're going to have high claimants probably. So that GLP-1, medical inflation, maybe it won't be as high, but it'll probably be there. So the plan design really is the important piece of this. I think it's important for everyone to understand that. And the last thing I'd like to, it's not a question, just I want to highlight to everyone, and this is to any staff or the public listening to this, is that we have the insurance committee, which includes obviously Co-Chair Langenfeld as our board representative, but also you folks and teachers, union, our staff in this. So this is a partnership with folks who have our insurance, right? So we are, and it's always been that way. So I know increases were high last time, and everyone in that committee and everyone is working to try to keep it low and get the best plans we can get. So I think it's just important to highlight that we want to do what's right for our organization and for our staff. And thank you for all the work you guys do on that.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next agenda item is the Enrollment Center update. Welcome Tanya Constantine, Deputy Superintendent, Greg Cole, Chief Operations Officer, and Michelle Vandentop, Director of Technology and Information Services.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is so warm and inviting. I like this setup. Good evening, co-chairs Langenfeld and Hochman, Superintendent McIntyre, and the rest of the school board. We are here tonight to talk about our district enrollment center. Right now, enrollment is an action. It's something that new families can go onto our website and click enroll. And that works for about 85% of our families. But for about 15% of our families who require more wraparound services, we're excited to talk about the enrollment center becoming a place. We had the perfect opportunity to create this collaborative space with the Coon Rapids Welcome Center ending that lease that we talked about a couple months ago. And now this is going to create a really great collaborative space, not only for the folks who are out at the Welcome Center, and they are just a gift to these families that come in, but also to provide a space for all the wraparound services that are currently based at the ESC. So I'm going to let Michelle Vandentop talk about this because it's not something that was just talked about since I've come in. I'm about 10 years late to this conversation. That's how long that this process has been talked about, and I'm sure Director Simon, you know all about this conversation, how far back it goes as well. I know Corey had mentioned that even when he was an ASUP here, that it was something that had been talked about, so it's exciting to be a part of it.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent McIntyre. I am so excited to be here tonight talking about our Anoka-Hennepin Enrollment Center. And I know we've shared that this has been a conversation for so many years, and we're so excited to talk about where we're at today. So the first thing is really talking about a purpose and why are we here. This project is really about our customers, our parents and guardians when we're onboarding them to Anoka-Hennepin schools as a new family and being able to give them a comprehensive experience. Right now we have a great experience. We know we can make it better. And that is what this enrollment center is going to do for our families. The first thing I want to share is that this is aligned with our strategic priorities, and Greg is going to share a little bit later around how that connects. But first of all, let's talk about how we're going to move from a welcome center to an Anoka-Hennepin enrollment center. So as Tanya mentioned, we have done a lot of pre-work and proactive steps to get us to where we're at today. So this conversation began many years ago. I was bringing teams of people throughout the metro to neighboring school districts for them to see enrollment centers, to experience it, to have demos, to feel what it's like to be one of the families and walk through there and have a comprehensive experience that offers all of the wraparound services we want to offer all of our families. So we have visited, just to name a few, Minneapolis Public Schools Enrollment Center, St. Paul Public Schools Enrollment Center, and then Osseo, to our neighbor to the south. We've been back to Osseo many times because they offer a very comprehensive experience that has a lot of great push-in resources. We've also taken some proactive steps with making that decision to move out of the Coon Rapids Mall, which gave us this opportunity to think differently about our enrollment center. We've met with an architect to discuss plans with the space that we're looking at the Educational Service Center, our ESC. We've discussed with people that will be moving into this space what their new role might look like within an enrollment center. And in March, we'll begin construction, and hopefully in July, we'll be having a grand opening of our Anoka-Hennepin Enrollment Center. So as Tanya had shared, we have 85 to 90% of our enrolling families do this process online. And let me just share when this began. So I've been in my role for about 12 years now, and when I first started, there was a real disconnect for families as they entered school buildings to enroll. Everything was done on paper, and they might do the process 3 or 4 or 5 times over. And that just was not the experience that we wanted to continue to support. So back in 2018, we brought on what's called online registration through our Synergy student information system. This allowed families to enroll anywhere as long as they had access to a device. Whether it be a computer or a handheld device, they could do this from the comfort of their home. So when we talk about an enrollment process, we want to look at the enrollment process that's current for today's model and then look ahead to the new enrollment center. So like I said, 85 to 90% of our families go onto our webpage and they process through the steps of online registration. We have what's called a site-based model right now for supporting this process. At approximately 47 of our sites, our K-12 sites, we have what's called a registrar. The registrar oversees the registration queues, which is where that registration lands once the family completes the process. Now, going back to thinking about that family experience, how can we improve this? When a family has multiple age students, maybe one at elementary, one at middle school, one at high school, the message, we want it to be aligned, we want it to be consistent, but you have 3 different people processing a registration queue. The timing can be off, the messaging can be kind of out of alignment. This is where we can make improvements for our families. We can have an onboarding team at the central office taking lead on all registration queues. So that will be a process we move into our new model. Also, as Tanya mentioned, our Family Welcome Center does an amazing job with our families. They see our families that have indicated another language outside of English on the online registration process, or that may need help with translations. Those families are being sent over to the Welcome Center for this in-person testing for their students. Where we really are going to embrace the idea of an enrollment center is having them a part of this new cohesive team at the central office. In addition, you see on the right side all of the departments that can contribute to this wraparound service. So transportation, McKinney-Vento, our Hope Office, child nutrition, special education, all of our community ed offerings, Adventures Plus, adult basic ed, and early childhood screening. When we think about the impact this will have to our staffing, we are not asking for additional staff to house in our enrollment center. We're going to take the team that lives over at the Welcome Center right now, so there's about 5 of them, and we are going to take some of my staff from Applications and Connection Services, and we're going to become a cohesive team working out of the new enrollment center. This will offer some great flexibility with teaching one another all of the different processes we currently use and enhancing that process for our families. And then again, I just want to highlight the wraparound services. So when a family enters the enrollment center at the Anoka-Hennepin ESC, we will be able to do an intake process to determine what the family needs. Then all of our other departments at the central office can push in and support the family right inside the enrollment center. Our vision is that the family won't have to leave this space. They'll feel warm, welcome, and safe. They can stay in this space throughout their entire visit, throughout the entire onboarding, and get all of their questions answered. So the last part on that slide is just really acknowledging that those wraparound services is meant to create an experience that's a full onboarding experience where the family will leave with all of their questions answered. In conclusion, I just want to reiterate how this is going to create a new standard for our families and the engagement we have with them. It will also relieve our school sites from doing these registration queues, acknowledging that we give them criteria to keep that process tight, but now the message can be really aligned for families and consistent. It also will just bring all of those support staff in a united system at the ESC, so it's not fragmented. We're not sending families over to the welcome place, and then they may have to come over to talk to transportation. It's all cohesive. And most importantly, it's going to ensure that every family is truly onboarded with a welcoming experience. Right?
Thank you, Michelle. Co-chairs Hochman, Langenfeld, Superintendent McIntyre, members of the board. With any project, we do a cost-benefit analysis. That's something we always do. I want the public to know that. And as you're aware, as Michelle pointed out, we've been looking at this for a long time. The stars aligned a little bit, and not all for good reasons. Our budget reductions significantly reduced staff at the ESC. That impacted space. At the same time, as board members and the public are aware, we've been continually moving out of leased facilities and into facilities we own. And the reasons for that have to do a lot with the flexibility that we have with our funding to be able to do more with less. And frankly, in this case, we saw the chance to essentially provide better services at a lower cost. Our lease will expire here this summer at the Coon Rapids Family Mall. We'll be moving all of the programming there into the ESC and also Sorterberg and some other sites. This isn't the only program that's at the Family Welcome Center, but we really saw a chance to do something special here and provide a better service. Michelle, I want to really give a shout out to her in terms of working with our Buildings and Grounds team and an architect to really make this an efficient plan that maximizes service at a reasonable cost with the space that we have. So we spent a lot of time identifying the space, thinking about security, thinking about efficiency, thinking about access to services that we already have at the Educational Services Center. So we feel really great about this, and yeah, we're excited for the services it's going to provide our families moving forward. So with that, we take any comments or questions from board members.
Yeah, thank you for that. Questions, board members? Director DeShane?
Thank you. Could you expand a little bit on the cost benefit analysis, like maybe some high-level costs that we were having at the Family Welcome Center at the Coon Rapids Mall versus what the cost of the architect and construction might be, and how that played into your decision-making?
Sure. At this time, the lease for the Coon Rapids Family Mall programming, and it's a pretty large facility for those of you who have been there, is about $395,000 a year. The common area maintenance fees are about $180,000 a year. And then we also have janitorial or services that we pay $25,000 a year for a total of $600,000 a year. In addition to that, as mentioned before, we knew that we were facing some pretty significant mechanical replacements that we were looking at for the next maybe 2 or 3 years to the tune of around $500,000. So we're pretty confident that this project will essentially pay itself off in a year or maybe 2 at the most. And from that point forward, we're going to realize savings just based on those costs.
Thank you.
Director Simon?
I'm gonna need a new mic next time. Thank you, this is exciting, I agree. Michelle, thanks so much for your work, I think it's amazing. Greg, you too. I think it's thinking outside the box too, like during our budget cuts of like, how can we serve our folks better and save money? And you guys came up with that, so thank you from us and from everyone in our district. I just had one question. So right now, the individual sites, right? So the folks at individual sites are going to get an offload of some work, right? Because they won't be doing that function anymore, correct? But that means if they're off, which is good, right? We always look at workload and not making sure we're not having too much, right? But if they're offloading that, you guys are getting that, right? So and I'm sure you've thought all of this through and everything, but we just have to always be mindful, and I'm sure you are, of workload on our folks, right? So if it's great that sites are getting some offloaded, but you're getting more. So just keep Corey and Greg and Tanya and everyone updated on workload, because that's important. Thanks.
Co-Chair Langenfeld?
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, and quite frankly, it was before this date.
Was it? Okay.
Patrick Plant and I went out and started this journey in probably about 2009, 10, somewhere in there. So, but there were problems, and you solved a lot of them, just finding the space, finding the finance, all of those pieces. But this actually factors into what Director Simon is saying. At that time, there was discussion about some FTE going to this effort. And I think to your point, Director Simon, well taken, in that has to be monitored. One of the questions that, as I think about this, and I think it's really important as our families come forward, just a small percentage, but having multiple children in different spaces and needs. When a student, and this may be just a general question for you, Michelle, when a student comes to the district, and let's say, having been a principal, I've used to have students come with no transcripts and not know where their placement is. And it became very, sometimes challenging to get the records. The question that I have for us as a district is, what is the process and who is responsible to get those materials? And let's say Michelle comes and I don't have transcripts and I'm going to a high school and, that kind of thing, and people don't know where to start me out. Well, how do we address that as a district? And is that something that is part of this plan, or would that still go back onto the high schools? How does that work?
You're correct. It is sometimes challenging to get everything we need to place the student appropriately, especially in the 612 world
Right.
where the coursework is really important. K-5 is a little bit easier. But one thing we do not do is delay enrollment.
Right.
We want to get the students started as soon as possible. Now, with that being said, we also don't want to put them in the wrong courses. So we do our best effort to collect records from the previous institution. Sometimes they're out of country, right? So we
Right.
need to review transcripts that may be in another language. We have staff that help us with that. Our counseling staff is amazing at the site level. Let me talk about the process going forward, because remember, we're moving away from a site process of reviewing the queue. So our team will do the registration queues and approve using the tight criteria that we use to determine that a family is eligible to enroll. Birth certificate, proof of residency, et cetera. Once we approve, that's when the ball goes to the court, kind of to the court of the site again. And that's where they start the records request as well as the schedule. So they are building the schedule. So there is a strong partnership with the teams that have been doing the work. It's just we're taking that first piece to ensure that the consistency is there. Now, back to your question, if we don't have the records, at a site level, that student would be assessed to determine where they're at with proficiency so that they can be placed appropriately, especially 612, and that does happen often with our ML population. They use the access testing to determine proficiencies, to determine coursework.
So then, as you're waiting for the materials or the course, to understand where the student is at, do they receive any kind of online opportunities, things like that? Is that up to the schools, or how does that work?
Yeah, generally the goal is to have the student enrolled within 48 hours of approving their registration. So there may be times where we get them in a course that's not a good fit, and then once they're assessed, we shift or we pivot.
So they're put in schedules, but there's not a place, having done this in a prior experience, putting them in online opportunities as we get that information. We're
We
not doing
haven't
that.
explored that, but that could be an option that we explore.
Okay, I'm just curious about that because quite frankly, it is important to place that student in the best place that they can be most
I agree.
successful. And so
And
I'd
get them
appreciate-
started as quickly. The
Well,
last
I
thing
think
we want them to
we
be
are at a
waiting.
place, fortunately now, where we can do a lot more than we used to be able to do as we waited for the
Mm-hmm.
materials to come. So just a consideration as we move forward, that would be great. And thank you for this. And, there was some concern back in the day that we didn't have a site on both sides of the river.
Yeah.
But I think we are at a place where it seems like people and transportation seems to work. But I would assume if anyone reached out and didn't have transportation, we'd help them figure it out. To get here
Absolutely.
to register in
Yeah, that was
person.
actually one of the talking points we had with each of the enrollment centers.
Yeah.
Osseo being on a bus line where they thought that might be
Right.
utilized by a lot of their families, and it really wasn't. Families found ways to get to them. So we're hoping for that experience as well. The other thing I would note is we feel like this is realistic today because of online registration. Knowing that 85% of our families are completing it, don't need those wraparound services, it's realistic to think that those families that need it can come to us and we can help them in a comprehensive way.
You'll come back and tell us how great it's working.
I sure
right?
will.
All right.
Well, and Director Langenfeld, when I was here 10 years ago looking at this, that was the barrier. It was still
Yeah.
paper. So what changed the whole game is online registration. Otherwise, we would have had to do 2 enrollment centers, one on each side of the river, and that was really tough. And so think back far enough, families with multiple buildings had to go to multiple buildings and fill everything out by hand. Just really, and this is our first opportunity to make a positive impression on our families and our students. So this will move us miles ahead to do that well. And I do want to kind of also address one of your questions. The highest standards to make sure we're authenticating, verifying records. whether it's, all those
important,
required
too.
records, making sure they're legitimate,
Yes,
okay?
yes.
So we're, like everyone else, trying to make sure we're following best practice, best standards, how to make sure they're legitimate and not something else, right? So that's from a safety perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate knowing that, and our public will too.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that.
All right, well, thank you so much. Before you go, I just want to echo that idea that maybe that's something that we investigate as this great opportunity is, launching, and we have this chance to offer this to our families to get their kids enrolled and into classes, like you said, 48 hours soon, getting them, but what can we do to make certain that we're not pushing them ahead putting the cart before the horse, right? Making certain that they're in the right place, because as a classroom teacher myself, that could happen from time to time. A student comes in and the counseling department does the best they can to get the child placed in the courses they think they need. And then the paperwork comes in, the transcript actually arrives, and we find out, there are some services they're supposed to have that we didn't know, so they weren't getting those services, or they were in a course that wasn't quite right, either too advanced or not quite enough. So maybe we can think through that and find some ways to, yes, get them learning as soon as possible, maybe an online option until we can get them in the right place. I think that would be really a wise thought.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Our next agenda item is 26-27 District Strategic Priorities. Superintendent McIntyre.
I'm going to try to move us quickly through this one. I want to thank Co-Chairs Hoekman and Langenfeld for the discussions leading up to this and your ability to poll and work with board members on their input. Really, we're moving this forward to continue our focus and remain steadfast in our mission, and really to continue to represent the commitment and disciplined approach to our work that you've made the commitment for. So the priorities really are not changing course by much. We're, in my mind, deepening our commitment and our focus to stay the course and to turn our implementation efforts then into those measurable impacts that you're all wanting to see, right? So when we look to the 26-27 year, it gives us, doing this now allows us to get ahead of a few things, mainly our budgeting cycle, our planning cycles for the coming school year. So we're really just paring this down even more, with more focus, with the fact that we've accomplished some work that can come off now at this point, and really maintaining our primary three areas: behavior, literacy, and workforce, and continuing to let those be the center of our work, especially through the challenging financial times we've been through. I think this is my recommendation, to really stay true to these three areas. How do we continue to improve student engagement and behavior? How do we continue to implement and measure our literacy efforts? You're going to see, as we move through the spring, the additional work at the secondary level in combination with the elementary commitments you've already made to be in alignment with the Science of Reading and the READ Act, and that unified framework that this will provide. And then also, lastly, just continue the commitment to a strong workforce, not just in the teaching and learning areas, but all of our other operational areas as well. So this really, to me, is a stay-the-course plan to drive deeper and to really give the district a chance to then evaluate and measure impact on these three areas. So that's my short description here, and I'm encouraging the board to, you have a draft document in here, and I would recommend, if there's general agreement here, that we could bring this back on consent at the next board meeting to make that finalized.
All right, thank you, Superintendent McIntyre. Thoughts?
Thanks, Linda. Thank you, Corey. I agree. I think simple is better at this moment, so I endorse this. One thing I would like is kind of the meat behind it, right? So I'm just curious if we're thinking about changing our actions behind any of these, or if they're remaining the same too, because I have some thoughts about retention, and that is maybe different than what we've done in the past specifically. So if there is current action items behind this, I would love to see it, or maybe there aren't yet. Maybe you can answer that.
How about so I think it's important to do that, and we can provide the board updated details behind each of the 3 areas. I think you're going to see a lot on literacy coming up, so that's not going to be much of a question for you. As we've looked out at the next 3 months, a lot of details coming there. But I'll work with our team to do some follow-up with you to flesh that out. That's good. Yeah.
I think that's a great point, to make certain that they're not just a bullet that's listed there, but we have some goals, some ideas, and actions behind it. Okay, thank you for that. To the next item, 2026 District Legislative Platform, Superintendent McIntyre.
Yeah, I'll be brief on this one as well, and kind of a similar approach. I thank you, co-chairs, for helping, poll board members for input on this. Because we are in a policy-focused session this year in the biennium, not a funding year, it makes sense that for this year's priorities or legislative platform, that we focus on those policy areas where we can make the biggest impact. So a couple areas, key shifts to pay attention to, and we did attach some dollar amounts here just to give it some tangible traction with our legislators. For example, without permanent funding for unemployment and paid family medical leave, that's in the neighborhood of $5.5 million, should that not be continually funded by the state. And it's always, to me, important, and I think we agreed when we were talking about this recently, our cross subsidies in the area of special education and our multilingual learners is in the neighborhood of $38 million as well. So we want to make sure we continue to make clear to our legislators that those cross subsidy efforts matter. So, we cannot let that fall backwards. And again, it's a policy year, but I think keeping that narrative strong is important. Also, the big one this session, it's a policy decision, but we have a financial one, is our compensatory aid funding. There's $9 million on the line for us, and I see Michelle shaking her head out there. We cannot afford to go backwards on that, along with the work of the Blue Ribbon Commission that I'm on with special education. That's, for us, got about another $6 million in question. So those are policy things that we can really focus our energy on. And also just a couple other things that we put in the draft platform. Any flexibility we can get with state standards implementation, we talked about that recently, that gives some breathing room to districts to implement without kind of that rigid one-size-fits-all constraint. Giving us more flexibility, I think, would be a place to talk about that with our legislators. And then lastly, really the simple notion of either fully fund the underfunded or unfunded mandates or repeal them. And one of those that has come up for this board in the last couple of years is that K-3 discipline proposal. And we've tried to cost that out as we move forward. That's a good example of that. I know Director Arco, you had a great question earlier today about what's the status with funding for meals. That is, at this point, a fully funded requirement, so that's not really in the category of underfunded or unfunded. It's a requirement. They have to fund it unless a law gets changed. But that's one that I know we've tried to look at the under or unfunded mandates that continue to come out. I still think of the READ Act as one of those areas too, where we spent nearly $5 million and only got about half of that for PD and materials. So every district's going through a stretch here where they're implementing using, in part, general fund dollars for that. So in the platform, the goal was to keep this really simple. This will be a fast-moving session. We've been hearing that a lot lately. I know Co-Chair Langenfeld's been at some meetings with me at AMSD. The session opens February 17th. All the policy bills have to be turned in by March 27th. So it's about a 5 to 6 week window. So our recommendation is our best way to make impact is really hit hard those days at the Capitol, have those individual conversations using our platform to influence our legislators, knowing that this is going to go much faster than a more traditional year. So maybe with that, I'll pause and see if co-chairs, you have any thoughts as we had some conversation about this here recently.
Okay. Thank you for that, board members. Additional ideas? Go ahead. Dr.
Just a
DeShane.
quick question. So the first page of the legislative platform, looks like we carried over some information from last time. Can you talk about what the planned updates to that might be, or are we still sending the message that we have a budget shortfall of 26 million?
So, yeah, that's an area that we want to edit, and thanks for catching that, because I kind of went right to the back page. So I'd like this to reflect that we've already made 22.2 million, and we have another 5 million looking ahead. So when you get to nearly $28 million, that sets the tone, I think, for us to leverage some of these policy areas, especially with the ones that have big financial impact. So that would be an edit here that we've made. I want it to reflect, accurate action of the board. So we've made the 22.2 with another 5 million, roughly pending. So I think that's the edit I'd make there, and we'll make that adjustment before you make the final approval on this document, probably coming back to you on the 23rd of February.
Thank you. That was all.
Director Simon?
Good question. That was one of mine. Appreciate that. I like the simplicity of it. I think it's very clear. I'm in support of that. One potential addition that I would suggest for us to consider, the 22 million, it might be good to give some bullet points to the legislators of what that meant to us. What did we cut? What did we lose? What are our students in our community not going to get because of that money? And maybe that can be carried over if they get rid of Comp Ed and 9 million. We don't know what would be cut. Obviously, this board would decide upon that, but what are some high-level bullet points of important things and how much they cost us, right? So like 9 million, how many teachers would that mean? Not saying we're gonna cut teachers, but just letting the legislators know, I think it's very impactful for them to have those talking points and that transparency into what those types of dollars mean to Anoka-Hennepin. So I would suggest that. I think it might make it even more impactful.
And I would just add, as we've had individual conversations with our legislators, those are the things we do talk a lot about to kind of make it understandable. Like, what does that mean? How many staff is that? Those kinds of things. I think we maybe can rethink some of these factors. We've had these factors on for 2 years straight. I think people are pretty clear on what those are. So we could shift that to what are the areas being impacted by those cuts that we've made as a shift.
That's an excellent suggestion.
Okay. So we'll work on that and bring it back on the next, by the time you approve it on the 23rd, we're already a week into the session. That's how quickly it's approaching.
Director Arco?
Yeah, so, okay, one quick question, then I'll have a thought to follow up. I had sent an email earlier asking if we had any data on how many classroom evacuations we had specifically for K-3 this year so far and last year.
We do, thank you, and I was able to get that. I didn't think I'd have it ready, but last year, that K-3 discipline piece, last year collectively we had approximately 240. And this year so far, we've had about 140. And this as a friendly reminder to the board members, we do have a page on our website with this information around classroom safety and evacuation data, right, linked on our page, where our data from 24-25 is on there, and then an analysis and breakdown of that goes even deeper from key findings to classroom impacts. And then some resources as well on that page. So I want to remind the board that we still have that information out there for our public.
I appreciate that, Superintendent McIntyre. So the reason I ask that is just point out this idea with the K-3 discipline statute, that it might be true in some sense that if we have a number of 1.5 million listed, maybe we could help with staffing or additional resources to offset the cost. But really the primary damage that's causing the district is, I mean, just, if you could boil it down to a single metric, it's just increased classroom evacuations, because what we were told is previously, sometimes when these students have behaviors, they would be, for example, suspended, not for the sake of getting them out of class per se, but to come up with a plan, give the staff time to recoup and figure out how best to help that student. And so we've lost that ability because we're not allowed by law to suspend any student in kindergarten through 3rd grade. And so the kind of pernicious nature of this, just to point it out, is I believe it was a board meeting a while ago, our lobbyist had explained that one of the motivations behind why the statute was passed was because it was specifically whoever the author of the bill was, is a representative from like the St. Paul or Minneapolis area, and they were concerned that students of color were getting disciplined more than, I guess, not students of color. And so their idea then was to pass this law, which essentially creates a lose-lose situation for, like, no one benefits from this at all, including the students of color, because regardless of who's causing whatever, like, behavioral issue, if classrooms are evacuated, the students who are doing nothing are not learning, and the student that caused the classroom evacuation is also not getting help. And so it just creates a lose-lose across the board. This is one of the worst laws, in my opinion, passed in recent Minnesota history, and it has done only damage. No benefit has come from this, in my opinion. And I guess if we could get some money for it to help, that would be great, but I think just repealing it is the very safe thing to do, or the very kind of common sense thing to do. So I would be much more in favor of just saying, please repeal this. It helps no one. And unfortunately, as Director Langenfeld knows, we were at an MSBA event, and there's a really good speaker there, and they pointed out that the number of mandates, unfunded mandates, but just mandates in general, has increased dramatically in recent years in Minnesota, and this is the way he described it, I appreciate the honesty he had, but there's really no political incentive to get rid of them, regardless of how bad they are, because to get rid of them could be a liability to politicians, but once they're there, they kind of just move on to the next thing, and stuff like this just gets lost in the fray, because this, I guarantee you, is not being talked about by the public. The public doesn't really care about this. They don't understand the impacts of it. They're generally not going to connect the dots. The politicians know this. And so, sadly, I think we're probably just going to be stuck with this one. But I'm going to keep harping on this. Like, we really should advocate to get rid of this mandate. It is terrible across the board. It is a lose-lose scenario. If you could even point to one party that was benefiting from this, at least we could have a conversation. But there's literally no one benefiting from this. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for this conversation. Hopefully we'll be able to carry this forward. And yeah, just want to echo that thought that we have a fixed budget. We can't just raise funds. We can't go have a cookie sale or something to get more money into our school system. Our kids need that. The only relief that we can possibly have is to take these unfunded mandates and relieve the pressure so that we can get the attention where it needs to be on the students in the classroom. We definitely don't want to minimize any of the services that we're giving our students. We want to maximize every dollar that we have to give them the best possible education.
Maybe one last comment. We just had our legislative session at AMSD on Friday morning, and there was really great presentation on the compensatory aid by Rochester and Centennial, some other districts that presented. We had a really strong turnout, actually, of our legislators, and one of the panelists was our own Senator Abler. So there was engagement there, and so kind of to your point, hopefully we have the ear of our those that serve us, and we will do our best to make sure we're telling our story.
And if I could add to that, if you've not seen, you should have gotten an update to be able to watch the presentation or listen to it. It was excellent because both Centennial, Minneapolis, and Rochester took different issues, you know, from comp ed all the way to the impact of the current reality that we have around the unfunded mandates of employment and employing people and paying all through the summer, things like that, and really getting down to why it's problematic. Thanking the legislature for what they have done, and then the panel of experts representing different areas of the state, including Jim Abler, who is remote. You can listen to their responses to these important questions, which I was going to wait for it, but I'll do it right now. We have our opportunity for MSBA at the legislature on March 9th. We do have a school board meeting that night, but it's from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we'll start out at the History Center in St. Paul. Legislators can come in, and what's really nice about the day at the Capitol now is that MSBA actually sets up the appointments, so we can just roll, and sometimes it's just being in the hallway, catching people as we go through as well. I know 2 years ago, Director DeShane was there, and Superintendent McIntyre and Jim Abler was on the committee and called them up to talk. And, you know, I think that's really important because it affords you the opportunity to get the reality to the people who are advocating for us and for our schools and communities. So again, that is March 9th. Everyone is invited. I know that we're supposed to go through our office to let them know how many are coming, and Ms. Ball is smiling over there. Theo is smiling. So if you plan to go or would like to go, we'd love. The contingencies that I see from different districts always impress me, and I'd love to have everyone come on down with us as well to be able to share those things. But the AMSD update, it was excellent, the legislative preview, and also the piece for the upcoming opportunity with MSBA on the 9th.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
I apologize for the late question, but it just reminded me of something here. Are we planning a legislative meeting with our district legislators?
At this point, we're not, only because the timeline is so tight. So as we talked with our lobbyists, we thought our impact will be greater on the individual meetings on those days at the Capitol. The calendar was a challenge for us, and by the time we could make our schedules work with the tight window we had, we felt like our efforts were, this time around at least, more impactful at hitting those days at the Capitol and in those one-on-one conversations.
Okay, thank you for that update, and just as one board member, I really value those meetings, so if we could continue discussion as a board about bringing that back for next year, I would be in support of that. I think it's really important for us to be engaged in front of them as often as we can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are nearing our last board agenda item, board correspondence and communication. Members, this is your opportunity to share happenings in your community, report on committee assignments or other items of interest. Does anyone have anything to share? Director DeShane.
Thank you again, and I just wanted to start off with one thing. It's February, which is I Love to Read Month, and we have a lot of readathons going on across our district. I know we've been asked to be guest readers or mystery readers at a few schools. There's some surprises and fun things going on at different elementary schools, so I just want to encourage all of our students out there to make sure they're reading, make sure they're participating in the events that they have in front of them. And to that end, I brought two of my favorite children's books that have animals as lead characters. Little Bear's Little Boat, if anybody wants a recommendation, and then the Mercy Watson series. I think those are super great books. I would encourage anyone that's curious about books to talk to your media specialist or your librarian and get in your reading minutes. Thank you.
Just to follow up with that, Battle of the Books in the different schools are already starting, and students have been reading and reading, and I am going to be at Battle of the Books tomorrow at Jackson Middle School to do some observations, including my own granddaughter, so I'm pretty excited about that. The other thing I had the privilege to do was attend my first sixth grade orchestra concert over at Jackson as well, and what I love about Anoka-Hennepin, always have, always will, is the investment in the arts and the incredible, incredible people we have leading our kids in the arts. It is well known, and we've been named the best school districts or whatever for those awards for the arts. But to really keep the music and programming alive, theater included, and I know Director DeShane and I both were able to see the play this last weekend at Champlain Park High School, our town, and really have those opportunities for our kids, in addition to incredible sports opportunities, theater, music, all of the above, so each child can find their own passion and pathway. And that doesn't even include all the clubs and things. And we had a great presentation at the celebration for Anoka-Hennepin Education Foundation, and thanking you, Director Simon, for representing our board on that board. And huge success, but they had a great story about outdoor adventures. And if you don't know about outdoor adventures, you really should. It was pretty impressive, so those are my updates.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Next item, item 7, will be conducted in a closed session. The executive session will be closed pursuant Minnesota statute 13D.05 subsection 3B to discuss attorney-client privilege. The closed session will be held in the Michael Sullivan Room. I would entertain a motion to move to closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Director Simon and Director DeShane. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. With 5 in favor and 0 opposed, we will move to closed session. 5-minute break.